Astra, more like disaster.
We can all agree that this is a hot looking car.
See where I'm going here? Modifications, small budget. It never ends well, and that's why so many of them fail.
I don't know why more manufacturers don't do this.
You're looking at timing chain failures, piston failures, oil consumption, and just generally all-round shitness.
Okay, these can seem incredibly tempting, but like, what goes wrong with them? How are they aging? And even though they tick loads of like hot hatch boxes, should you seriously consider buying one? How about we find out? Okay, so even what these are called can be really confusing here in Australia, because it seems that when these first came out, General Motors was so out of touch with the market, they just kind of threw different names and badges at them, hoping something would stick, and clearly it didn't. See what I mean? From 2012 to 2013, this here in Australia is an Opel Astra OPC, but then from 2013 to 2015, it became a Holden Astra VXR. But then in the UK, they're called a Vauxhall Astra VXR. And you know what the differences are between all of these different models? Really nothing, not a whole lot. There's a couple of like aesthetic changes and some Bluetooth changes, but besides that, they're all pretty much the same car. And that all means that they are all based on the EconoBox Astra platform, and they are all packing a turbocharged 2-litre 4-cylinder engine powering the front wheels via a 6-speed manual gearbox. Look, those power figures might seem impressive, but this thing is substantially heavier than much of its competition. In fact, it's over 100 kilos heavier than a Mazda 3 MPS and over 200 kilos heavier than a Renault Megane RS. And then we come to the price of these things. And look, maybe because Holden has been put out to pasture, and maybe because Opel as a brand lasted about 15 minutes here in Australia, these things are going cheap. So brand new on the road, these things were asking around about $45,000. 10 years later, the cheapest ones are going to be around about $12,000, and even the most expensive ones under $25,000. And that is obviously terrible news if you bought one of these things brand new, but potentially awesome news if you're looking at buying one used, although we haven't taken you through what goes wrong with it yet. But if you are looking at buying one of these, or really any car, and you need to get your finance sorted, hit the driver link down below. That way Driver will customize you your very own finance package. They're going to find you the best rates from dozens of different lenders. The entire thing is done completely online, which means no talking to strangers, and you can get pre-approval in just minutes. Plus, if you do all of that via the link down below, we're going to give you a free $150 fuel voucher. Okay, so look, we all know looks are subjective, but I'm sure we can all agree that Charlize Theron and Henry Cavill are very attractive people, right? Well, surely we can all agree that this is a hot looking car. Like, I mean, like, the proportions are just perfection. The way it kind of balances, it's sort of it is a hatchback, but it's also kind of a coupe. And then the front of it, it somehow looks like aggressive and happy all at once. Then there are the details, like the way this part doesn't really resolve, like it's almost being sucked into the intake at the front. Then there's this beautiful crease line that kind of wraps around the door handle. This just like accentuates the shoulders. It again makes it look athletic. Even the taillights, they're kind of like looking back at you going, yeah, you stay back there. Are you kind of picking up that I love the way this thing looks? Like, it is so sexy. But unfortunately, maybe those looks are just skin deep. Cover that soon. So I feel like the designers for the exterior maybe ghosted the designers for the interior, because like it's a really nice place to be in here, but it's nowhere near as standout in design terms as the exterior. Like, it's not bad at all, but it is starting to feel its age a bit. And even in terms of the materials used, like the plastics and the colors and whatnot, yeah, it does feel 10 years old. Now, I personally prefer buttons to control most of your stuff instead of a touch screen, but this is a little crazy. You do get used to, I suppose, the tactility of what button to hit, but it's a little bit confronting when you first get in. But then build quality, so good. Like, there is no movement on anything. The feeling of the buttons is fantastic. It feels solid. I thought it might feel a bit cheap and nasty in here as far as like build quality goes. It doesn't. It feels top notch. But then, massive standout, these seats. Oh my God. Okay, first of all, comfort, top notch. Some of the best seats I've ever sat in, but then also super supportive. So much adjustability as well. They even look great. The leather on them, like, you know, this car's 10 years old, but the leather is aging beautifully. Like, it still feels as soft as when it would be new. Seats, brilliant. I mean, even the seating position, this is as good a seating position as any performance car I've ever sat in. Like, even where the gear stick is versus the steering wheel, absolutely perfect. But as far as wear and tear goes, besides the seats, other wear and tear, interesting. bloody gloss black plastic. Manufacturers, when are you going to learn? Yeah, it looks great when it's new and in a catalogue or online, but after a while it just gets scratched up and looks gross and gets dirty so easily. Some of the buttons as well, because it's a slightly porous material, they kind of attract dirt and grot. Besides that, wear and tear good. Door cards are excellent. The carpet's looking good, Nick. Roof lining's great. It's okay for wear and tear, except for the obvious. And then when it comes to practicality up front, you've got an excellent sized glove box there. You've got a spot perfectly sized for your phone just under the center console. Cup holder here, but then behind this little trapdoor, you've got what could be 2 more cup holders, but the cool thing is the divider comes out. So this could also just be a storage bin or another 2 cup holders for larger drinks. Then a little center cubby hole here, amazing sized door bins, and finally a little hidden secret spot for some coins and whatnot. Okay, now before we get into the back seat, first of all, these doors are bloody huge, and that means if you're parking in like a tight space, actually getting in and out can be a nightmare. Also, even though it is technically a hatchback, it has more of a kind of coupe body style, a bit like a Volkswagen Scirocco or a Megane RS. So getting in the back seat can require at least a certain level of athleticism. Here we go. And then once you're in the back, I'll be honest, it's not a great place to be. I'm exactly 1 centimeter shorter than actor Astra VXR. This is in my driving position. And I've got to do the full like OnlyFans style leg spread to get my legs in here. There's hardly any foot room. The seats themselves, super comfortable. But then because it's so dark and then, you know, this window's quite small, it does feel quite claustrophobic in here. I wouldn't want to be back here for too long. And as far as wear and tear goes, because no one in their right mind would ever sit back here, there is no wear and tear. This basically feels like a brand new car. But then practicality in the back seat is actually pretty good. You've got like a little slide out drawer for storage here. You've got your own power outlet there. You've got a pull down armrest here with 2 cup holders, and then even more like storage under the armrest. And then you can even access the boot via the little trapdoor. Nothing else, that's it for practicality. Now, before we show you how much space is in the boot, even getting in the boot is super cool. I don't know why more manufacturers don't do this, just push the badge down. Awesome. And then once you're in the boot, it is massive back here. What's also massive is the load lip to get things in and out, but huge amount of space. Plus when you put the seats down, they fold kind of almost flat. Look at this. Loads of space. Sexy car, but very practical. Okay, so General Motors might have been a bit lost when it comes to the branding and I suppose the image of these things, but one thing they had a really good grasp on is that if you have a car that has not a whole lot of brand appeal, just throw loads of tech and features at it, and yeah, they did with this. For example, even as standard, you're going to get a premium hi-fi system, cruise control, leather interior, and all of this and more. Oh, I should mention the Holden VXRs of these. They updated the infotainment system with the MyLink system, but even that's really starting to feel its age these days. Actually, you know what? If you'd rather avoid the frustration that comes with like Bluetooth dropping out and like 3G levels of phone connectivity, just bin this entire system and get an aftermarket unit with Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, all of that sort of stuff. While you're at it as well, because of some of the sight lines in this, fit a reversing camera because it'll help. But there's even more good news. General Motors threw the full suite of performance mechanical parts at these as well. We're talking the Brembo brakes, Hyperstrut front suspension, adaptive dampers, and a proper motorsport-derived mechanical limited slit front diff. Now look, as far as safety goes, obviously with the age of these, you can forget about, you know, any sort of autonomous safety technology, but what you get is still pretty good. But to take you through what safety equipment that you can expect, it does seem only right that we have celebrity actor Astra VXR do the next voiceover.
Okay, so safety features you can expect include 6 airbags, anti-lock brakes, electronic brake force distribution, brake assist, electronic stability control, traction control, active front seat head restraints, and front seat belts with dual pretensioners and load limiters. I have no idea what a pretensioner or load limiter even is, but for all the specific details on all the features and so much more, head to ReDriven.com and check out the awesome and completely free cheat sheet.
Okay, so look, this thing, it does have all of the hot hatch ingredients, but is it fun? Well, look, not exactly, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'll explain. See, let's talk about like Civic Type R, Megane RS. Those things are hardcore performance hot hatches, but they can be tiresome as a daily driver. They're just hyperactive all the time. But then you've got like Golf GTI, Mazda 3, MPS, Focus ST. Definite hot hatches and definitely more usable as a daily driver. but because they're trying to kind of be everything to everyone, they can be a little disappointing. Whereas this thing, it feels like it's, okay, you may be sacrificing some of the hardcore performance stuff in favor of just being maybe the more sensible hot hatch. Like, because of its weight, and because of how well tuned this suspension setup is, it's just lovely all the time. Okay, you do lose some of the engagement that comes with the more hardcore hot hatches. Don't get us wrong, this thing is bloody fast, like incredibly fast in a straight line, but I don't know if it feels all that fast. And that whole being sensible approach then translates to the way everything feels in here, like the steering, the gear change, handling, all of it. Like, it's all fast, but it's a bit sensible. Look, this is basically the hot hatch for people that want all of the performance, but they don't want to be rattled to pieces, even if that means that you miss out on some of the drama and engagement. Look, if that's a good or a bad thing is totally up to you and what you want from a hot hatch. And like, granted, you can hit the Sport or the OPC or VXR button, and that does change things up a little bit, but for me, they feel a bit contrived, honestly. It's kind of like the automotive version of putting on more makeup. It's like, Astra, you were great to start with. Don't go plastering yourself with bloody makeup. As far as negatives go, look, yeah, okay, with the age of the car, there are a few little rattles and squeaks and funny noises here and there. But on the flip side of that, the good noises happen when you actually like floor it. It's quick. But then a negative with doing that is fuel consumption. Plenty of owners out there are complaining that they very barely get 450 kilometers to a full tank, and when a full tank costs $100, that's a nightmare. Another negative, vision out the back, the rear 3/4 blind spot is a bit confronting. But the big negative I've got with this thing is just the concern that if something were to go wrong with it, what's that going to cost to fix, and where am I going to get the parts from? Okay, now to the heartbreaking stuff. What goes wrong with these? First up, let's start with the exterior. Plenty of owners have complained about water gathering in the tailgate channel. And then there are the random electronic gremlins like power windows not working, door lock actuators, power mirrors playing up. In saying that, they're not common issues, more sporadic. And then plenty of owners have complained that the standard headlights just aren't bright enough, and that's disappointing for a car that was supposed to be like the flagship model of this range. Okay, then we come to the paint. Now, there are a few, this is a weird one, reports that different panels can fade at different rates. Obviously, this is more obvious in cars that are stored outside of its garage and looked after. You shouldn't have these problems. But yeah, like quarter panels being lighter than the bonnet, which is a different color to the front bar. Very weird. And then also with the paint, apparently it is very, very thin, and it's super susceptible to chips and scratches and even swirls if you polish too hard. Okay, now this next one isn't exactly the car's fault as such, but as you can see, these are fitted with gorgeous Italian Brembo brakes. And Brembo is actually Italian for stops great, but bloody expensive. They're expensive. Plus the 20-inch wheels, and to get the best out of the performance of these cars, you're going to need really high quality rubber. That's going to be expensive as well. Plus the car weighs a bit, so it's going to go through them and them pretty regularly. And also this next one isn't exactly the car's fault, but these are not common. You don't see many around, and Holden doesn't exist anymore. So hypothetically, if you need a new front bar or a bonnet or a quarter panel, finding it's going to be a challenge, and it could be expensive to get it in from the UK. But one thing that isn't a complete nightmare to get and isn't expensive are the best wiper blades in the business, WiperTech. Honestly, guys, they are genuinely some of the best wiper blades we've ever used. We have them on all of our cars, and you can get some too for 15% off, and also get free express shipping by hitting that link down there. Order them online, easy to fit, brilliant wiper blades. Okay, now problems inside. The big one is that the handle on the back of the front seat that you pull to basically, slide the seat forward so people can get in the back. The handle itself, the plastic handle, and even the cable inside, they can break, and apparently it's a massive pain in the ass to fix because the entire back of the seat has to come apart. Oh, also with the seats, the reclining mechanism itself, it can also break. Next up, plenty of owners have complained that these buttons can wear down really easily. Also, a few owners have complained that the little thing that stops your door from kind of opening all the way, it can break and starts making a really annoying clicking sound, but not on this car. And also, like the exterior, there are a few reports of just random electronic gremlins, everything from like really minor issues with, the occasional button not working, or maybe some HVAC problems, but small ones, but then through to like huge complications with the HVAC system where the entire dash has to come out of the car. That's going to be expensive to fix. But again, this then opens up the subject of the cost and availability of parts. Like the exterior, if you need repair parts or replacement parts for the interior, they're hard to get here in Australia, and even shipping them in from the UK, the part itself might not be that expensive, but with the cost of freight these days, plenty of owners have complained that they've spent way more money on the freight cost than they have on the spare part cost itself. Oh, also, as we kind of alluded to before, loads of owners have had heaps of issues with the infotainment systems. As I said, Bluetooth dropping out, all sorts of problems with that. Although, maybe the people that are complaining about it just are like me and just aren't that tolerant to those issues. Maybe there are some far more tolerant owners out there that haven't had an issue. Now, thank you for making it this far in the video, but we want to make you a deal. If you support us by hitting that subscribe button, we're going to work our asses off to make you the very best car content we can. Thank you so much. Also, Ricky, mate, thank you for lending us your car. Dude, you are an absolute legend. Thank you so, so much. Also, if you've got a car that you think would make a great ReDriven video, why not let us know on our socials, just message us there, or let us know in the comments below. Okay, now, mechanically, what can go wrong with these things? Look, I would love to tell you, but I can't. I'm not a qualified mechanic. Luckily, Jim is.
The engine in these comes from the Ecotec family of 4-cylinder engines, and they are notoriously unreliable. The earlier non-turbo versions are known for timing chain failure, oil consumption, piston failure, and just all-round shitness, really. And the version in these, the 2-litre turbo, well, it's a pretty similar story, actually. One of the big problems they have is the timing chains break, or actually the timing chain guides break. If you're lucky, you'll hear it rattling and you'll get the opportunity to fix it. If you're unlucky, the timing will slip and the valves will hit pistons, and it's a catastrophic engine failure and a really expensive bill. The water pumps in these occasionally fail. Look, no more often than anything else really, but they're quite complicated and a bit of a pain in the ass to do. The water pump is driven off the timing chain. Well, actually it's the balance shaft chain. And to change that, you need a special tool to support the front sprocket of the chain, and it's just a bit of a muck around. It's certainly not a do-it-yourself at home job. Turbo complications are not unheard of, and quite often that's from the oil supply line. Not only can it leak, but more often it just blocks up, and quite often that's from poor maintenance. And when that does happen, the turbo is starved of oil and the turbo fails. Boost leaks are fairly common, and there are a few complications with the PCV setup as well. Typically they're not too hard to find and fairly easy to fix. Another common problem with these is piston failure and ringland failure, but typically that's a result of a dodgy tune. And these are a very popular tuning platform, especially with owners on a limited budget. See where I'm going here? Modifications, small budget. It never ends well, and that's why so many of them fail. If it has been modified and the engine holds together for a while, which is unlikely, the next thing to break is the gearbox. Now, the gearbox is not an unreliable gearbox in a stock car, but when you start putting big horsepower through it, which a lot of people do, they break. The moral to the story here is if you're going to buy one, just buy a completely standard one with a flawless service history. Those cars, the unmolested, well-serviced ones, look, aside from the timing chains, they're actually not too bad. But one potential problem bigger than any mechanical issue you might have is the ongoing availability of parts. For example, in Australia, Holden no longer exists. And we've heard from the owners groups that parts can be sometimes really hard to get and very expensive.
Okay, look, before we tell you if you should buy one of these or not, let's just reiterate that Ricky that owns this thing loves it. All the owners that we spoke to in the owners groups, they love them. Between you and I bloody love this thing. But as we always say at ReDriven, it is totally okay to love a shit car. Look, obviously that's being way too harsh. This is not a shit car. It's actually pretty awesome. But the reason that you shouldn't buy one has nothing to do with the car and everything to do with owning it. Holden doesn't exist anymore. Australia seems to be General Motors' lowest priority, and accessing parts, the cost of these parts and maintenance and the resulting catastrophic levels of depreciation are just all huge red flags. Look, if you are a true dedicated fan, yeah, look, please buy one and please do everything you can to keep these on the roads because they're an awesome thing. But on the other hand, if you are tempted to buy one of these because the combination of performance, practicality and a bargain price all seem too good to be true, yeah, you're right. Unfortunately, it is too good to be true. And all that means you should probably buy something else. But what do you get? Do you get like a Mazda 3 MPS or a Golf GTI or maybe a Focus ST, maybe a Renault Megane RS? Let us know in the comments what you should buy instead. See you guys next time. Okay, look, before we tell you if you should buy one of these or not, good stuff. Brand new on the road, you're looking around.
We have heard from the owners groups that, why do I keep forgetting my way?
Okay, so look, looks are object. Yeah. I don't know why more manufacturers don't do this.